Welcome back. You're with us here on IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. Tonight, our second conversation in Spotlight is on the commodities space.
India's economy is experiencing significant growth, and as a result, there is a surge in demand for agricultural products. Although agriculture is the primary source of income for approximately 58% of India's population and the government is allocating adequate budgetary provisions to develop the sector, it remains disorganized. To address the challenges faced by small farmers, the agri-logistics sector has emerged and is providing essential infrastructure and services. This sector has not only increased farmer income but also reduced food wastage given the increasing demand for food. The Sohan Lal Commodity Management Group is a trailblazer in this sector and is now moving towards technology-driven warehousing services. They have state-of-the-art equipment to provide storage and protection for the entire range of agricultural commodities.
Thank you so much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow and setting the context of the big ideas for New India when it comes to the commodities and the agri space, such an important and crucial component really of all the conversations. And we were talking about it offline, whether we are talking FMCG or we are talking any sort of retail business or any other business, there's some element of commodity there. And I'm so glad to be having you join us today. Before we go any further, this is the first time that you are joining us on the show. For the sake of our viewers who are wondering perhaps what the company does, what the legacy is, what the history is, can you give us a brief background?
So thank you for having me here. It's a great thought, sharing my thoughts with you people. You see, as I've said, I started SLCM in 2009. We are first of all, let me explain to you what we do. We are a post-harvest agri-logistics firm, which means that we address the entire agri chain in its full, complete fraternity. We do right from procurement to warehousing to quality assessment to quality upkeep, then after that packing, storage, and then financing of the produce, and finally putting that produce onto a consumer's plate. So it's a holistic view of the entire agri value chain. That's what we do. In 2009, when I started this company with one warehouse, we had a vision of actually transforming the entire agri value chain, and we had this vision with the idea of being an asset-light model. There was a thesis behind being an asset-light model because we understood that agri crops in India are a very, very unique set of synthesis happening on the ground.
Sure.
So unlike any other country which has very large farmlands and a very comprehensive value chain, India has a very disintegrated value chain. Which meant that if you were to build any assets out of agri warehousing, those assets would not make any complementary ROE.
Sure.
Having said that, we started with one warehouses, and in that journey I kept on adding warehouses, and today I am proud to say we are serving more than 10,000 plus warehouses, spanning 197 million square feet of space, measuring 1,090 different commodities and variants, and doing a throughput of 2,700 million metric tons. In this journey of ours, it is very important for me to also tell you that we are impacting about 26 crore people annually. So this is what we do. But when I say what we do, this is just the start of what we do.
I want to talk about the big ideas for India when it comes to the agri space. First and foremost, let's talk digital. And we're here in your office in New Delhi, and we're looking at cameras that are doing live real-time tracking of your warehouses across the country. And you shared with me that in places where, for instance, there's no electricity as well, you're able to do that. So first and foremost, I want to talk the big picture when it comes to the merger between digital and agri. What really is going on? And then talk to us about your examples.
So as I've said, in 2009, when we started this entire journey, we were also very clear about the infrastructure issues within India. It was also very clear to us that these infrastructure issues are not going to go away. And I'm sitting in 2022, 14 years now, and I still say the same. See, India has a unique climate agricultural system ecosystem. Now, to address the unique climate agricultural ecosystem along with the infrastructure issues on the ground, you need to have a system which is called Phygital. We've devised this word called Phygital, wherein digital meets physical. In 2009, AgTech is the buzz of the day, as you would say. When you talk about digitization today, when we talk about UPIs and you talk about e-commerce, AgTech has become the buzz of the day. But we started this in 2009. I applied for a patent on agriculture by the name of Agri Reach in 2013, which we got in 2022 ourselves after 9 years of scrutiny. Now, what is this all about? Let me also talk about that, because you have to understand this. In India, despite all our advancements, 10% of agri produce of India in dry grains alone actually gets disrupted and destroyed, gets itself unconsumable within 1 year, which means a 1 lakh crore worth of crop gets wasted every year. Please understand how many people can be fed with that 1 lakh crore kind of
Sure.
We cannot have technology sitting in the boardroom of a company and say that this is how it is advocating. You see the entire agri value chain.
Yeah. Sure. So first and foremost is digitization and the use of technology, and we are at a time when we're talking about agri-tech companies or ag-tech companies, and we're seeing huge amounts of valuations coming into these businesses. Are you happy with the integration that's happening from an industry point of view between tech and what companies are doing? What's your advice for someone who's watching this interview to say these are the opportunities?
See, I think the opportunity is very much glaring us in our heads right now. See, agriculture itself, the whole task is so enormous that not one company, not even a dozen companies can fulfill the requirement on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's the context here.
Sure.
But with this context, there is also a word of caution. Let's not get enamored by valuations. Let's not get enamored by the way other e-commerce systems have worked.
Yeah.
Agriculture is a very different ecosystem.
Sure.
And in agriculture ecosystem, the cash burn model will not work. We are very clear to this, that it's like saying that you're sitting on a plane and then they say first have your own oxygen mask on before putting and helping your co-passenger. So similarly, if you are burning cash, you are EBITDA negative. Any amount of top line being achieved in agriculture is very easy. As I've said, this is a country which is producing 350 million metric tons of produce on dry grains alone.
Yeah.
And that also annually.
Sure.
So you can say this is, you can achieve a top line of 10,000 crores, 20,000 crores, it doesn't matter. What matters is that what is the bottom line which is coming down to your balance sheet, because that bottom line will also denote that whether your agri ecosystem is actually working or not working. Just having a connect on an application saying I can buy or sell a particular crop doesn't make any difference. So the entire physical value chain has to be mapped by digital, which somehow we are seeing is still missing.
Okay.
And that's why I said the Phygital is the way to go forward.
Sure.
And that is what is going to change. And if I look at my young entrepreneurs which are coming in, some of them are very enamored by the valuation game.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear. Valuation is something, it's a byproduct of your systems. A valuation will come on its own. If your product is actually denoting a need, then these valuations will automatically fall through.
Okay, so we've discussed digital. I also want to talk about some of the announcements that we've heard in the budget, particularly as far as millets are concerned. The UN declaring this as the year of millets, really. How do we see large-scale adoption of what are essentially indigenous to countries like India?
So I'll take it with a pinch of salt when I say this is millets. You see, millets were always an important substitute diet within the Indian palate.
Yeah.
So having a year denoted to millets is much more like a much needed PR initiative to ensure that millets actually come to the plates of even well-to-do families in the system. Millets were always a substitution crops to some degree, right? And we've about a few years earlier we had the pulses day or the pulses year. Now we have the millet year. What is more important is that how do we integrate the millet into my staple dietary of the entire population of India and perhaps the Western population. This is also a good idea of actually moving away the Indian cultivation into a crop rotation pattern where millets become a major production, or millets actually become a major area for production.
Okay. How do you also foresee what is going to be the trickle-down effects, if I can call it that, really, of some of the global headwinds that we've seen, and how entrepreneurs here in India can perhaps insulate themselves against, whether it's the Russian-Ukraine war, for instance, and the impact that it's had on food grains here in the country, or pricing globally, really. How do you insulate yourself against these?
So, first of all, if you look at it purely from an Indian context, India has sufficient buffer stocks, and with this new advanced estimates coming in, and also our own research coming in, we are very clear that even for next year, India would have sufficient buffer stocks within the wheat and rice paradigm to insulate India from any external such shocks. But with that being said, it is also very important that India is a part of a global community. So we need to also make sure that if we can help our global community while being an export surplus nation, it should happen. It should happen. The other problem I am foreseeing is that till last year, Ukraine and Russia still had some buffer stocks of their own in wheat.
Sure.
But in the past 1 year when the war is still going on, the sowing has not happened.
Yeah.
And this is going to have a negative impact on the carry as well as the new crop arriving in those countries, which will further affect the ecosystem. But I can confidently say that if I were to insulate India and look at India on a standalone basis, we are sufficiently covered. There is no matter of alarm here. There is no matter of thought that India is going to go the way other certain countries are going, where there are food shortages or there could be riots or anything. I don't think that is a cause of action in India as of now.
Okay, we've been talking about the opportunities for a new India. I want to speak about the challenges as well. And first and foremost is, why haven't more players been able to replicate what you're doing in terms of ensuring the warehousing and the integrity really of food to plate?
So the biggest challenge in India on agriculture is actually knowledge. A lot of people are not looking at the agriculture system in a whole holistic view.
Yeah.
Everybody is looking at it in a fragmented manner. Somebody looks at it from a trade manner. Can I digitize? Can I actually look at the trading fraternity? Somebody talks about, can I look at only the warehousing part? There are people who will say, I'll only look at the quality aspect part. There are people who will say, we'll only look at the agriculture financing part. Till the time you don't address the entire value chain in one platform, it does not make any sense financially.
Yeah.
So it's a sum of parts. It's a game of sum of parts. So if you individually take one part out and say that this is going to denote enough return on capital employed or enough return on equity, and yet larger funds will actually follow through, it won't happen.
Sure.
So you will have to look at this from an entire agriculture value chain and say that I'm going to address all parts, and each part is going to denote a bigger progressive value to the entire value chain. Second important thing is, it's a game of patience. Agriculture is not for the faint-hearted. It's for people who have patience. I say 3 P's. It's like, unlike the 3 P's of marketing, these 3 P's of agriculture is patience, perseverance, and persistence.
Okay.
If you don't have these 3, you will not survive on agriculture. It cannot happen because it's a very difficult terrain to maneuver.
Thank you so much for your time here on the show.
Thank you, ma'am.
Alright, completely out of time on tonight's conversation. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Details on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.